wellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, featuring your hosts Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner.
Before we get started today, I'd love to introduce you to our new podcast sponsor, which is Fire Tonic. If you haven't heard of Fire Tonic before, it is a raw fermented apple cider vinegar that has a whole heap of other goodness in it, such as chilies, turmeric, garlic, horseradish, ginger, just to name a few, and it has this delicious, warming, spicy kind of aftertaste that just warms your stomach and your solar plexus and has you feeling amazing just by taking it. But aside from that, raw apple cider vinegar is immune boosting. It's antibacterial, antiviral. It will decongest whatever you are stuffed up in the head with. It's antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. It's also the best digestive booster. Apple cider vinegar is the same pH as our natural secretions and also stimulates those natural secretions. So if you're feeling a bit low in your digestive system, if you've got a bit of a sore throat or feel something coming on, it's great. I've used this before just to knock something on its head, like a sore throat or a virus that's gone through the rest of my family. And for me, I've just kept up with the Fire Tonic little shots, which I absolutely love anyway because I love a bit of spice. And it really does just knock it on its head. So it is locally made here in Torquay, Victoria, in small batches from a really ancient gypsy recipe. And we are absolutely mad for it. So if you also need a bit of a boost this winter that you can take that is delicious, digestive and immune boosting, then please jump on to hilbilby, hilbilby.com.au and check them out. You can also use a special promo code for our tribe, which is Nourish, Nourish 10, in order to get 10% off your order, just to give it a go. Bridget and I use it. It's on our counter all the time. So head on over to hilbilby.com.au/discount/Nourish 10 to get your 10% off and start loving on some Fire Tonic.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is When Sex is Just Not Happening. So before we dive into that, I'd love to remind you to jump on to nourishingthemother.com.au and sign up to join our tribe, where once a week we'll send you a wrap-up with links to everything we've put out in the world, and you can pick and choose where you'd love to dive a little deeper. Occasionally we'll send you a second email we call them love letters. They're like little conversations that Bridget and I would have that are more intimate and not made for the wider world of Facebook and Instagram.
They're the ones we're not kind of willing to put out there for anyone. They're the ones that we keep for safer waters, I suppose.
Yeah, well, for women that we know it's really going to resonate with, who are speaking our lingo, who are, have made that next leap to be part of the tribe.
Who I guess trust us and we in turn trust them,
Totally, that's what it is, yeah. Definitely feel safer putting that stuff there. Anyway, jump on to nourishingthemother.com.au and sign up to join our tribe.
And I suppose this topic really has come about as a result of some feedback that we've got from one of our most recent love letters that we sent out.
Yeah.
Which was really, your, next breaking open of self on your own sexual
I've had a fucking massive
story.
week.
Yeah, right. Do you want to give people a little brief overview of that, and then we can talk about that in the context of where we're at now?
Yeah, sure. Well, as you know, if you are a long-time listener, or perhaps if you're not and you've just found us, my body of knowledge is around women and their bodies. Embodiment.
It is like profound knowledge, can I just say?
And my biggest pain. So, don't be, one of the posts I put up this week was don't be fooled by the illusion that people have their shit together, because even those that are teaching something are teaching it because they're still learning it. There's such a big pain there that it forces them to learn and to grow, and therefore they gain a body of wisdom. And if they're ready to integrate that to the next level, they'll be sharing it beyond themselves and their family, which is where I find myself. But that doesn't change the fact that sometimes sex just isn't happening. And this has been, post baby number 4 has been a really big journey for me in the next evolution of what that is. So after my birth with her, during my pregnancy, I realised I was developing I didn't actually know it was a prolapse. I just thought it was a lot of pressure. And fourth baby, just, heaviness.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until, I don't know, probably like the 8-week mark that I went, everything else has gone back, so to speak, but this hasn't. And I think this might be a prolapse. And I went for my checkup and, yes, it was confirmed I had an anterior wall prolapse. And then I kind of then went, okay, what are my options? Anyway, long story, we've had a podcast on that with Catherine Middlebrooks. I found her, which was amazing, and started doing her yoga. And part of all of that has been really trying to integrate sexuality whilst being a conscious parenting, fully breastfeeding mother. And to some extent, there's been evolutions of that being difficult for me over the course of 4 children. And with each child, I've been able to find more and more of my sexuality as I'm able to mingle the identities of mother and seductress.
So you're almost able to transition out of one and into another.
Yeah, but even I think that's what I did with my third. It was very, and probably to some extent I had to learn with my second. It was very, now I'm mother, now I'm seductress. Whereas I definitely have found that with my evolution now, and that everything is sensual. So, and look, it's a little bit taboo, and I suppose in a way, but sensuality, even an experience with our children, can fuel our sexual energy in the sense that it is life force energy.
And because I guess it's that oxytocin building,
yes,
relationship,
yes,
that you can then move between people.
Correct. So once you are able to gain some sort of mastery over breath and energy movement, then you're able to have a level of mastery over where that goes in your body. Now, we are women who are the literal walking embodiment of the feminine. We have the power to create, sustain and nourish life. And life force is the Kundalini sexual energy. It is what creates life, what facilitates life everywhere in this universe. And so I started to really understand the concept of being able to move it through my body and absorb, I suppose, and store like a storage bank, this energy that I could breathe inwards and move to different parts of my body. So it wasn't that I had to transition from one to the other. I was really understanding how to be a sensual woman that was grounded in her sexuality without it needing to be porno. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sexuality that was sensual and said, I'm here to nourish. And it felt for me like the next step up in that, I suppose. And I was really enjoying that, and we were going really well until, you hit the next bit where you're not. And life gets busy and babies start waking up. And you're too tired. Work takes over, certainly for my husband, other commitments, and it's easy to go, I just can't be bothered. I'm too tired. Well, if he doesn't try it in the next 10 minutes, that's it, I'm off to bed. Nothing? Righto. Fuck you, I'm going to bed.
I so know that too, right?
Yeah.
And then
like 1,000 stories.
Yeah, and you build up resentment, and then that creates more distance.
Yeah, that's totally what I'm talking about. And so as I'm physically creating more resistance because I'm not able to speak up and say, I need help with this, or I need to be able to do that, or what I really want to experience is this, I'm off on my own little journey.
Yeah.
Not involving him at all. And as I do that, I'm waiting for him, like almost like setting a trap and being a lioness, waiting for him just to jump into it. I'm like setting these traps of, is he going to? Yep, you did. How disappointing.
Just looking for him to. This is very Queen's Code emasculation, right?
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah. And I'm looking at all these, I'm going, ugh. Just, can't believe you, like, what? And in my head, I'm thinking all of these stories. I've already decided the fact that reality is this. And so therefore he's that. And the reason that he's doing that or not doing that is because reality is this. And I've not involved him once in any of my little, world of story that I'm currently living in. And he's got absolutely no idea of the world of story living. All he's going is kind of reactionary to my like, as I'm sniping at him every now and then or thinking, ugh, he's so disappointing, you know, or whatever. Yeah. And I can see him trying to do stuff. So he'll do more dishes or he'll clean up more or he'll, do you need me to take the baby and do this one? I'm looking at him going, yeah, I really do. But that's actually not what I want at all, but I'm not telling you that. So you do that shit and you still irritate me. you know, like this. Like I'm thinking.
You're doing it and you know you're being so
I know
petty.
I'm doing it and I can't stop it, you know, and in my head I'm thinking, I don't know what it is actually. I think it's easier to do that than it is honestly to own my voice and to own the pain. Anyway, so several months ago, we had this really big conversation about sex and sexuality and where we were at and where I wanted to head. And really what I said. So you've got to remember, he's a very, in inverted commas, non-conscious bloke, like just a bloke's bloke, loves sport.
He's
hates reading books.
Just like my husband. You know, loves sport, hates reading books. Tick, tick.
Probably saw a poster of Tantra, you know, positions, but would know nothing else, you know. And I'm saying to him, that's it. This is it. I'm done with the sex we've been having. Done. Really, what I want is this. And I'm now willing to say to you, what I want is this. And what I need you to do is this. And what I don't want you to do is that. And what I want you to do is this. And it was a really massive, massive, massive conversation. And I gave him reading material and chapters out of ebooks and books that I wanted him to read. And ultimately then he disappointed me again because he tried, but it wasn't really hitting the mark. And he just one night he goes, oh, fuck, I don't even understand. Like, I think I'd given him a John Wineland.
I'm really feeling for him right now.
Yeah, no, I was starting to as well. And he's like, I don't even know what they're saying. Like, I can't even follow it. It's like this. And I'm sitting there going, really? And in my head, I'm thinking, wow, that's how far I've come. Like, that's also says to me I've got to remember that this sits for me on 20 years of research.
Yeah.
And this for him is the first time he's done it. And it's coming because the pain of his partner being unhappy is creating the drive to learn something he has never had a desire to learn before. Anyway, so I said, okay, what's going to work best for you? Would this work best if we set up date nights and being intimate, we would read a chapter or something from my reading list or listening list. We would listen to it together in bed nude, and then we would have a discussion about it, and then we would discuss how we would implement it into our sexuality or our next sexual exploration. He said, yes, actually, that would be really great. I said, okay.
I love this.
So that's what we did.
Yeah.
So our date nights, then we were, you know, locking them in because the thing is we want this passionate spontaneity kind of, you know, we're all chasing the desire that's fizzled out. But if you leave it to spontaneity, it never happens. And the further you get away and the easier it is to have excuses. And what if you could be more conscious with your sexuality and instead of waiting for it to happen upon you, you could put on your big girl pants or take them off, as it were.
Take them off.
And say, here's what I want to do and here's what I want to try, rather than spending 20 minutes pouncing around waiting for some sort of invitation or reaction and spending another 30 minutes fumbling around on the couch before you realize it's too uncomfortable and I don't know, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So we were choosing this really conscious path, which I have to say was by far the best thing we ever did, because by consciously scheduling it in, it alleviates the pressure for the masculine because they don't have to be concerned, anxious, constantly kind of tiptoeing or trying to work out, am I going to get inside her tonight? Am I not? Am I? Am I not? Am I? Am I not? And it alleviates all of this anxiety throughout your whole life because you know it's going to happen. Like there's no game here. He knows he's coming inside me tonight or on Tuesday or whenever it is. So spontaneity, funnily enough, happens because there's more intimacy.
Yeah, right. Because you've got that energy going on between you. So it's almost easier to go into that place as opposed to the chasm getting so big that it's painful.
Exactly.
It's too hard.
Exactly. So this has kind of been my year. And it's been great until it's not. And here we go again. And I was realizing I was getting really angry with him. And, you know, in my fantasy idea of having this tantric conscious lover was not living up to my expectations. You know, I was starting to get angry.
Because you're having such an ideal about what you want it to be that you're projecting onto him.
Right. And so many fantasies about what that looks like.
And he's never going to measure up to that.
Well, no one could. It's a fantasy.
Exactly.
And so I'm crashing down in my reality. And then, so anyway, I was getting really, really angry and narky. I'd copped out of our date nights for the last week. I was like, no, go to bed. Like, fuck you. So, and yeah, anyway. So then it got to the point where Saturday night I could not sleep. Like I was literally in insomnia, and I do not get insomnia. I love my sleep. And I'm lying awake between the hours of 2 and 4:30, literally unable to sleep, lying there. And all I have is my own little brain. And that's never quite a good place to be for me. And she's just chatting over, and that story's getting more intense. And I'm thinking about all the shit that he's not doing, and now I'm angrier at him, and he's fucking sleeping, and you know, like
fuck you for sleeping.
Anyway, and I was dog tired Sunday because I just did not sleep. And then I'm pretty sure the baby woke up, so I've got to sleep at 4:30. Baby woke up at 5. You know, this like just I was wrecked.
Yeah.
Knoxville Sunday. And we hadn't spent much time together. And my husband was like, do you want to have a date night tonight? And I was like, yeah, okay.
Don't sound too excited.
Because in my head I'm going, I know I have to show up for this. And petulant little child me is like, yeah, but you haven't done enough yet. You know, which is not the attitude you should be bringing to date night. Anyway, during the day I was like, this is ridiculous, Julie. Like, seriously, what the actual fuck are you doing? Because I know I'm doing it as well. So I took some time while the baby was sleeping and I think the others were out, and I wrote down everything, like verbal dialogue that was in my head. He's not, and like a list of things. I'm not, and like a list of things. What I want is, and a list of things. You know, everything I'm angry about, and a list of things. I'm really scared about, and a list of things. Just smacked it all out of my head as it was, you know, unedited. Yeah. And then on the reverse side of that piece of paper, I took a breath and went, so what are you going to do? Was the question I put at the top. And the very first thing that came out without me even needing to think about it was show up and own your voice. And I was like, I know. I felt like I was having this conversation with, you know, God or higher me. I'm looking up at the sky going, I know. I know. Why am I not doing that? You know. And so then I wrote down a list of things about what I was going to do, what I needed to say to own my truth and my voice. And, you know, and to be honest, it was a fairly scathing kind of thing. I was thinking, this is really going to hurt him when I say it. Part of me is enjoying that. Part of me is scared of that. Anyway, it's date night. It's too hard. I'll just go to sleep instead.
Even after all that work.
After all that work, right. It's fucking scary.
Yeah.
And I totally chickened out. It was easier to blame it on being too tired because that's acceptable, right? Sorry, I'm so tired. So I went to sleep, / not really asleep. To which point he gave up and went to sleep.
Did he try it on a bit? Like, did he kind of start?
A little bit, yeah, but I was giving him absolutely nothing.
Wow.
And then I totally shut down, right? Because it was I had totally hit a wall where I was so scared. And the vulnerability and the pain of showing up, of saying something that I had no idea how it was going to go, all of the story that I'd already created in my mind about him and me and, you know, our sex life and blah, blah, blah. And I can't fucking sleep again.
Oh, no.
An hour goes past.
Oh, God.
I'm still fucking awake. And now I'm looking at the clock going, should have fucking done this 2 hours ago, Julie. Then you'd be asleep by now. Like, what are you doing? And I'm in my head going, I know. I'm pretty sure at one point I was like, I know.
Out loud.
Out loud. I know. And then I'd look over at him next to me and I'd think, no, I can't wake him up. What am I going to say? Like, what am I going to,
Yeah.
And then I'm going, I know. And I'm looking at him going, I can't do it. I can't do it. I got up a couple of times to lean over him to wake him. Oh, I can't do it. Go back again, get up. No, can't do it. Like it was excruciating.
Yes. Oh, gosh.
And in the end, I felt like this voice in my head was yelling at me, fucking do it. And I'm like, okay. Like this. And I'm like shaking him.
Like a little bit too forcefully shaking him.
Woke him up. And he's like, what? Like this. And I'm like, I can't sleep. I need to talk. And he's beautiful. I think he totally knows something's up. But he also, part of our dynamic is, he's not the one that's going to go necessarily. We're learning that language, but as yet our pattern is not broken. Anyway, so I chicken out again. What do you guys want to talk about? And I'm like, fucking say it, Julie. I don't know. What do you want to talk about? And in my head I'm going, I'm not even in the conversation. Anyway, in the end, it dies out and my heart's racing and I can feel my body going, just do it, just do it, just do it. Just rip that Band-Aid off. Just say it and then it's out there. Just do it. Where is your voice? Like this. And in the end, I'm like, okay. So I took a big breath and I went, here's what I really want to talk to you about. And I just went for it.
Like a running race.
But it was really good because I'd previously written it down. It to some extent had clarity because I think pre-writing it down, I just had all these feelings.
That you wouldn't have been able to articulate maybe.
Couldn't articulate them. Whereas I knew to some extent, having done my writing process, what my issues were. And I just blurted them out. You're not this and I'm really scared about that and da-da-da. And I went on and on and on and on and he just listened. And then I ended up bursting into tears. I realised at the bottom of all of that was a huge amount of shame and pain about the fact that I had a prolapse and in my mind what that meant. The messages I'd picked up culturally and I was totally plugged back into, and I can think of a catalogue of memories where I have been, and I think all of us have to some extent, told how disgusting my vagina is, in terms of cultural messages. I thought of teenage boys when I was learning and emerging in sexuality. I thought about the way they used to joke and say shitty comments about girls that they'd been down on and what they felt like, what their vaginas looked like, what they tasted like. And it was always gross. And now I think of those stories, I think they're so like as if they had even done that. Like they're just making shit up.
Yeah.
But me back then had totally taken that on. And so I realised I had so much story around how unattractive my vagina was. And I've said before that oral sex has always been hard for me because I find it so hard to be really open. But I had been doing so much work on extended and multiple massive orgasms that I was like, this is what everybody does, right? They lie there with their legs open and they allow themselves to be observed, like really looked at. I've never done that.
Really?
No. And it's because I have so much shame, so much shame. And so here I am sobbing as I feel in my body the enormous story that I have about my vagina. And what I'm saying to him is, I'm so scared that this is what I want and I know I need to do this thing to be in the next level of sexuality where I want to be. And I'm so scared you're going to look at me and be completely repulsed. But really, I'm just feeling that for myself.
Because you're feeling that in yourself, you're projecting that out onto him, thinking he's going to feel that. And that's too scary to fathom that the person that you love and have chosen would feel that way about you.
And just for the first time, really feeling those big feelings I had, because when I first kind of found my prolapse, I was like, right, well, I'll do the conscious work on what the prolapse is and why it's here. And
you really took it in your stride.
It's a really good blessing because it really is bringing my focus back to this area of my body. And this is the first time I'd felt the flip of that. And so on one hand, I'm grateful that just by virtue of showing up, I've had this deep body felt realization. And so was he. And then I got to be quiet after I had finished my sobbing, which he just held me for. When it comes to our sexuality, we want to look at the beliefs and the meanings that we've picked up as much as the ones that we've made up about our experiences.
In our Loathing to Loving program, we look at relationships to our family, partner, children, and feminine self, and spend a module in Nourish and Nurture, deeply expanding that feminine wisdom. Our Sensuality and Sexuality course is the next dive, exclusive to those who've taken part in the Loathing to Loving program.
The reason for that is the theory and the tools that you gain from Loathing to Loving underpin the knowledge of the psychosexual story that we build upon in our Sensual Sexual Deep Dive. For $289, you can join us in our exclusive Sensuality Sexuality course, or 3 payments of $97. We really want to walk you through loving your sexuality more than your sex life.
To find out more and join us, go to nourishingthemother.com.au/online programs.
Just hear words of affirmation for the beauty that is my vagina. Yoni, I don't know, labia, clitoris, I don't know, however you want to describe it. And a heartfelt, I don't know if regret is quite the word, but maybe regret mixed with a bit of sadness that I had never allowed him the opportunity to fully experience me in that way. Or that I had ever allowed myself to fully experience the pleasure that he wanted to give me but felt like he couldn't.
Because you'd put blocks in the way of him getting to you in that way.
Totally. And because of, you know, my parentified childhood as well, I have this story in my, well, so much, right? I realized I had the 3 stories, so I've got that one. Then in my head, I realized I have this parentified child story of, you know, I'm always running a checks and balances on love. I can't receive love until I've given enough to deserve love.
Yeah.
So I have to give in order to be okay with receiving. I can't just receive.
You can't just be worthy of it in and of itself.
I couldn't just have oral sex done to me and not do anything back. Like, really?
How is that fair?
Yeah, right? In my head, I know that I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And for everything. So even when I'm in a moment or moments of sexuality, I'm not really in my body because I'm still running the checks and balances. And at the same time, I'm running my very intensely cultural message from family and wider on my desirability and on pleasing my partner rather than following the seeds of my own feelings of desire. So I could see 3 stories playing out. And I cried some more as I realized and as he validated and confirmed for me that this was my story and this was my blocks and that no one was stopping me except me because it certainly wasn't him. And he was open and willing and present and showing up in every conceivable way he knew how. He didn't know what else I needed or wanted to do because I had never, ever voiced it, ever. So that was like epic. So, you know, our conversation there went on for, I don't know, probably an hour and a half or something. And then following that kind of just moved into this most explosive, incredible, connected to the universe, body made of stardust sex session that I had been chasing this whole time. We didn't do anything different. We didn't read more books in order to do better.
You just took the walls down.
I just took the walls down. And stood up for my truth and was willing to hear its opposite. And that allowed me enormous freedom. And I felt like I could breathe into my entire body in a way I had never been able to before. You know, so you can probably hear I'm fighting back tears because it was just, you know, those moments that are just so moving. And I just keep being brought back to how profound an intimate long-term relationship is. How profound. And how full of desire and how full of ecstasy.
And how much surprise is still possible? How much mystery is
how much
still
is still unknown.
Yeah.
So that was my week. And, you know, on Monday in our Loathing to Loving group, I Facebooked about it and cried all of these tears.
It was such a beautiful. It was so vulnerable. No, but it was so beautiful. Oh my God.
And then I sent a love letter today just talking about the experience of having my story busted and what that felt like. And we just had some really beautiful responses to that. So, yeah. When sex ain't happening.
I really love how you've been willing to show up so vulnerably and openly for our tribe in sharing that, because this is what it looks like, right? These are these edges that we find ourselves when we realize what's happening is no longer working anymore, but that we can sense that on some level it's us, you know, and that we are in this resistance and we are in this pattern, we are manifesting this dynamic. On some level, to call ourselves into this new area of growth, which, as you're illustrating, is so fucking scary.
Oh, it was terrifying.
I mean, like, as I shared with you, which I woke up in the middle of the night one night, completely sick, like with almost gastro-like symptoms, and was vomiting like I was purging something. And then in the middle, I had to wake my husband up to come and rub my back. And then I felt this overwhelming sense that I needed to just purge all this stuff to him so that he could hear me. And I'm mid-vomit going, I just feel like I can't talk to you right now. I just feel like you can't hear me. You know? And so I really just want to feel safe for you to be able to hear me. And I'm thinking, fuck, like if I had to manifest this crazy gastro to be cared for by my husband so that I can open up to this new level of conversation. I mean, this is where our relationships take us to.
And this is our physiology, also speaking from our psychology.
Yes. It's so, you know, like profound and yet so perfect. And as you were sharing, you know, that some of those points there, I thought, gosh, our relationships are all also working on us so much, because I realized, you know, recently, because I mean, ever since having children, my sex life's actually gotten better, because before I had children, I couldn't orgasm. It took me a long time, almost till I was 30, to be able to repattern whatever stories I've run to be able to receive pleasure in that way. So it's been massive. And it is getting better, and it requires more and more of that unraveling. But there was some sex a couple of weeks ago where I got that new level of heightened pleasure, and I thought, wow, like I knew this has always been possible, but I haven't always been willing to receive this. You know, this is
It's exactly what I'm talking about.
This is not outside of us. This is us.
No, right. And we keep looking for all of the things and the reasons and the people that can either save us, that we can feel a desire, attraction to, so we don't have to show up in the real hard part of intimacy, that we can, you know, move it on to this toy or that video or this.
You know, in some relations, that other person, or, you know, like this, you know, we're getting boring. You know, you and I are both in such long-term relationships that we're always finding new mystery and new opportunity, but it really requires the going into the pain that's there and transforming it. You know?
I'm thinking about these a few emails that we got in response to my vulnerability this week that were just really beautiful and just, you know, kind of saying #MeToo. And a few that were, you know, this is happening in my relationship and we, you know, don't really have sex anymore, or we haven't had sex in a really long time or something like that. And I felt such an overwhelming wave of gratitude that these women were willing to say this really vulnerable thing to me, to us. Because I think one of the dangers in looking at sexperting in any way, so, upskilling in sex, well, first off, one, don't ever assume that sex comes naturally, because that's a complete and total fallacy. Sex does not come naturally. Neither does our ability to learn how to be in our bodies or to be sexual completely. As you have been raised, you know what it was like coming of age, getting your first period, your emerging sexuality. Just think for a moment about the story that just even begins there before you lay on however many years post that. It does not come naturally. And there is a way to learn how to repattern and to go back and to look at that. But I also want to say sometimes you can go to places and get shocked out of it. I've done that.
Yeah. And that's important to note, because that's the unfortunate outcome sometimes of trying to do this conscious work, that you can almost pop yourself into a little bit of trauma as a result of it.
Yes, that's exactly right. And I just think you just want to be careful that wherever you're going really feels safe in your body, and that when you're exploring anything to do with your sexuality, that there is safety created first for you. Because don't forget, whatever anyone is preaching about sexuality is one version of, and sexuality is not one thing. If you can't do this one thing, it doesn't mean you are sexual or not sexual. If you can't show up in this one way, it doesn't mean you are sexual or not sexual. You are sensuality embodied because you are the feminine. You are the manifestation of the feminine. It is already within you without you needing to do and be anything. So the question more is what's holding you back, as opposed to what do you need to learn to be it, I think.
And also how are your, I think back in terms of the times in my relationship, and it was post my first baby, which probably was the worst time. And it was because my intimacy needs were being so deeply met by my son and by that oxytocin-fueled bubble that he and I were in, that really meant that I wasn't even needing the sex from my husband.
Because on some level you're really fulfilled.
I was really fulfilled.
Yeah.
But I could sense that he was needing it, and it was creating issues in our relationship. And so I was like, okay, well, I have to pleasure him and like tick it off. And so we'd do it this way, in this kind of masculine, let's try and do it every day and make it, like work for us. Forgetting about it starts first with embodiment. It starts first with reconnecting, because otherwise you're perpetuating that same teenage bullshit story that it's all about pleasuring them and it's all about servicing them.
Desirability versus desire. Yes.
So the work so much comes from reconnecting with yourself, learning to feel what it feels like to touch yourself. And I mean, even if that idea feels uncomfortable, then exploring what stories you have around self-pleasure and around being willing to receive self-pleasure and
around your vagina, like me.
Yeah. And you being worthy of that, and your body being a vessel for joy and pleasure and ecstasy. And if that's wrong for you, why is that wrong, and who told you that, and where did that belief come from, and do you want to hold on to that any longer? I mean, all of this stuff is part of repatterning your own story to be able to show up in your relationship in a way that is much more pleasureful, and much more deepening in terms of your sexual intimacy.
And I think that's another thing, is it seems like it's another thing to do. I really like that you said, well, I'll just tick that box and it's, done.
Yeah, that was totally where I used to be at.
But when we're doing it that way, we are, as you say, still trying to function in a masculine, outcome-oriented, goal-set kind of manifestation, as opposed to learning how to be in your feminine, which is the wellspring from which energy proliferates, but overflows out and dribbles and drips like honey into every area of your life. So even though it seems in your head when you're thinking about your to-do list, when you're in your masculine trying to get shit done mode, it's another thing I have to fit in, and how am I going to fit it in? Yeah. And that just feels draining, and I've got so much on already and so many people who need me already. Is you're still thinking about the desirability versus your own innate wellspring. And when you just think about when you're in those moments of flow and desire, and time stops. Maybe it's right before you orgasm, those feelings, those waves that are, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Like my mind is not anywhere else. that it actually flows, connection flows. You're connecting a pole between the masculine and the feminine, whether that's in a same-sex couple or not. They're still connecting through the poles of masculine and feminine. You're creating an arc of electricity between the two of you. You're fueling your body with oxytocin and a love bomb. And that literally gives energy and life force to everything, including you.
And it supercharges your brain. I mean, like, you know, so much of a lot of the tantric work and those ancient, you know, sexuality practices are about circulating sexual energy so that it feeds your whole body. And when your brain is feeding off that, I mean, it creates so much energy within you.
Yes, it does. So we would really love you to jump in with us to Sensuality Sexuality, which kicks off in about 2 weeks. And it's a live round that we're doing once a year. You do have access to the content all year, but we are doing facilitated live rounds once a year because we really want to dedicate time to re-immersing and emerging ourselves in our own sense of sexuality.
And really, you know, on that annual basis, facing the new levels of story and expansion that we're being called to face,
because it doesn't end.
It never ends. You know, it's like our tribe in Learning to Loving. Like, you know, that we've got women who are on their 4th or 5th maybe live round because we find new stuff, and it's a paradigm. It's a paradigm of thinking and of being in the world and relating to ourselves and our world that means that we're called ever forth to grow.
Yeah.
And now we're doing that in the sensuality and sexuality way.
And to have a community of women, like it is like an online women's circle, and don't underestimate what you can unpack and gain access to in a circle of women versus doing it on your own. So if you'd love to have more sexuality, you know, consciousness conversations with us, we'd love to have them with you too.
We would.
So jump onto nourishingthemother.com.au/online programs and you will find out about sensuality, sexuality.
You will. And to connect with us, it's nourishingthemother.com.au and Nourishing the Mother on Instagram and Facebook. And to connect with you, Jules,
is thepleasurenutritionist.com and you, Bridge?
suburbansandcastles.com. And remember to nourish the mother to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.